Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Ham Nation is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Ham Nation, episode number 56, July 18th, 2012. Mobile HF antennas. Hello, everybody. It's K9EID, and you are tuned to Ham Nation. It's a great show about ham radio, and we're glad that you found us here on the TWiT network. And we appreciate Leo Laporte giving the amateur radio community all the support of bandwidth and the engineering staff, production staff, and all of that. We're so happy to be here. And we're going to bring you some fun things about ham radio, and you need to call all your ham radio buddies and anybody that's not a ham radio operator, because we're going to help you get into this wonderful hobby. And to help me do that, we've got a couple of very important people that make this thing all run. George, how are you doing down in Mississippi? What's happening down there tonight in your new studio?
Hi, Bob and Julian and everyone else tonight. Well, we're still in the move-in process here. I didn't get that trim molding up yet. I'll eventually get to that. But you can see the workbench is full of junk right now. I've been busy in here. We're getting all the gear mounted. I haven't got everything connected yet, but I do think I can make the 20-meter net tonight. And lots of boxes stacked around. I've got to get this stuff on shelves, but hopefully in the next week or two, it'll all kind of fall into place.
All right. All right. Well, I know how that move-in is. You can see behind me, you have more and more things coming into the second location for Sarah and I. Julian, how are you doing in Costa Mesa? Everything going well there tonight? And it's good to see you. And I guess you had Gordo move out for a while, and you're in charge, right?
Yeah, that's right, Bob. Gordo had to be somewhere else today, so I'm standing in. I got the most obnoxiously loud shirt that I can find, and a pair of Men in Black or Blues Brothers glasses. So we're about ready to go, and we got some fun stuff from Gordo. He will be making an appearance today, so he won't be that missed. Back to you, Bob.
All right, and then we're going to switch down and bring in Don Wilbanks. Don, how are you doing?
Uh-oh, I think we lost him.
We lost him?
Try to get him back up.
Okay. Yeah, get him back up. Well, see, Don's got a friend with him. We'll let that find out what he's doing there. My goodness. George, how is the move? Is it 50%? 20% are slow?
Well, we're probably at 50%. Like I said, I've got a lot of junk sitting in here on the floor. My monitor just quit on me now, so I'm looking at a black screen. So there's a few bugs to work out just yet, but it's coming along nicely. You know, I got a 7-foot rack over here. You can't see. It's just to my left. And I picked it up at a TV station. I was getting rid of some of them. So I said, I'll grab that. There'll probably be a lot of empty space left over in it, and I'll just fill that up with some panels. Well, guess what? I could have used about another 2 foot of rack.
Yeah, that's always the way. You should have got 2 racks, put them side by side, then you'd had 14 foot, right?
Well, I should have. I don't think I could fill up that much, but I didn't think I'd fill up 7 feet. So got a few rigs that aren't going to make it into the rack.
Oh, golly. Well, you will fill them up. I trust me. We'll be seeing the day when you have, oh, gosh, I wish I'd have done that. I know how it goes. I moved in some more stuff behind me, is the Harvey Wells and the SX100. Then, of course, a couple of scopes, and then my beloved little Mosley CM1. I love that little Mosley receiver. How great AM that is. These are all vintage pieces of the late 50s and very early 60s, and they still function well. And I love having all this stuff around. Later on, you're going to see what happened to one of my Gonset communicators. It got restored, and it's just beautiful. So we're happy to have that. And it's just fun stuff to do, all of these things. Don, are you back with us just yet?
I think so. We've got a little rain shower down here in Picayune, and in the country with DSL, it tends to mess that up. You see Tyler over here, over my shoulder. You've seen him in the videos that we've shot before, and he decided he wanted to come in and sit in. You know, say hi, son? Hey. I don't know if you could hear that, but yeah, he says hey. So yeah, we're alive and well down here in South Mississippi, celebrating the $100 million quarterback for the Saints tonight. So I've got my Saints shirt on.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll be back to you, and I'm going to do some Newsline in a little bit. But first, we're going to go back to Costa Mesa. And Julian's got some video Gordon took. So, Julian, take it away and push the button that says start.
All right, Bob. Yeah, day before yesterday, Gordo and I met at his house, and we decided to grab a handful or even an armful of antennas and start to talk a little bit about going HF mobile. So here's the video, and I hope you enjoy it. Alex, if you don't mind.
Hi there, Ham Nation folks. Tonight we're going to look at high-frequency antennas. And you know, as a technician class operator, beginner operators also have a portion of HF that they can roll mobile, such as the 10-meter band, 28.3 to 28.5, 15, 40, and 75 if you pound a little bit of brass. General class, you've got every single band on HF, and extra class, you've got extra elbow room on each of the HF bands. But let's take a look and see what it takes to go mobile with mobile antennas on high frequency. And what we're going to try and do is to eliminate the need for a manual antenna tuner, but rather we're going to work on the mobile feed point. So let's go outside and take a look and see what it takes to light off HF and enjoy those great privileges while mobile with mobile HF antennas. Before we start playing high-frequency mobile antennas, always have protective eyewear. That way, when you're fiddling around with these sharp objects, you won't get one right in the eyeball. And today, we're going to take a look at mobile HF antennas of many different varieties. Some are center-loaded with a big white coil. Others may be helical-loaded with a stainless steel stinger on top. Yet others may be top-loaded with a helical wind on top. We're going to see how to mount this gaggle of antennas on your mobile unit. You need to have some adequate test gear. Doesn't have to be hundreds of dollars worth, but we've got some gear here that you probably have hanging around your shack. First item, a continuity meter. Simple volt ohm meter. Make sure your batteries are fresh. Next item, we're going to be talking about a variety of mounts and which one is going to give us the best feed point impedance. Next item, you might need it, you might not, and that is the impedance matching bridge. This one is a capacity bridge. This one is an inductive bridge with a toroidal inductor. Next, you're going to need to have an Allen wrench to loosen up the whip tips for precise frequency adjustment. Be cautious though, don't over tighten them or else you're going to strip out the soft threads that we find on some of the adjustment screws. Next item, if you have it, a little portable HF radio. This one's popular by Yaesu. The Elecraft has a wonderful portable that you can also use for testing. Battery operated, like the Elecraft, so that way you can tell if you've got a good hot antenna. Next item, a wrench to be able to adjust the feed point. Next, a battery to go along with the MFJ SWR Analyzer. And this analyzer is probably going to be one of your most important tools to be able to check the resonance of your antenna without having to actually go to your rig and transmit a signal on the air. But because you'll be using it a lot I recommend the external battery, and that plugs into Anderson connectors. And that way, with the MFJ bridge, you are on the air for your entire testing process. And finally, you might want to have different types of feed point screw-on assemblies for the antennas. And here are a couple of varieties, the L bracket, as well as this little volcano mount that seems to work well. And of course, good coax for our antenna testing. Here's the yellow dune buggy L bracket mount, and yes, the hose clamp does provide a good DC ground to the roll bar. Here's the Comvan K400 diamond mount on a door frame, and yes, the door is well DC grounded. Here's the tripod mount. This didn't work worth a hoot. Here's the roof rack mount, and this too was a terrible feed point performer. Julian and Hannah's red car mount, my favorite, trunk lid. This is the popular K400 mount from Diamond, and it takes the popular 3H24 threaded adapter plus the little tiny cable that you can see that won't get squashed when we close the trunk. The mount is affixed to either a vertical or a horizontal surface by 4 very well-manufactured Allen screws that won't strip out. And you actually dog the Allen screws all the way into the metal to make sure that the mount is well DC grounded. Let's make sure that the trunk lid is well grounded to the rest of the chassis. One end of our lead is to the chassis ground. Next is to one of these screws, and yes, look at the meter, 0.3 tenths of an ohm resistance, so we're well grounded. The Diamond K400 can be articulated this way, almost any way you need to place it so the antenna is absolutely vertical. Nice small RG174 coax. We want to make sure we don't pinch the coax, and there's a little notch for it here. But most important, before you close the trunk lid and you've got this all mounted, take a look at this. Julian, oh no! Julian, your brand new red car, if Hannah sees that, Julian, you're in deep trouble, because what occurs is as we close that trunk lid, we did not see that this is going to put a little gouge there. So many times on the K400 mount, this little part here that provides stability, it's got a little rubber back to it. You may need to bend it up just a little bit with a pair of pliers so when you close the trunk, you don't create a Julian scratch. All right, we've routed the coax all the way through to where the radio is going to be. We've got our MFJ SWR Analyzer tuned in to 7 megs. Let's go ahead and put on our 40-meter whip. And you know, Lakeview, from what we understand, is no longer making the 40-meter whips, so you may need to look around. This one's from Pro-Am. We also have MFJ, and also Workman make these great little helical wound center-loaded whips. You'll notice that the whip will screw right into the mount. And now, with this great mounting, let's go ahead and see what the SWR looks like. I don't have this screwed all the way in. You don't need to for our first SWR check. We have our 40-meter antenna on the L bracket here in the dune buggy. And as you can tell, the L bracket is a little on the thin side, so I would normally not recommend this thin of an L bracket. Let's do a reality check and add the coax. And you should hear the volume come up if everything is working properly. Oh, yeah. And we'll tune around now after I got the antenna on there. And as I slide my hand up and down the whip, hear how that noise comes and goes away. The noise comes and goes away when I put my hand on the actual coil. This means that I've got a good active piece of coax, a good active antenna. Now let's take a look at the standing wave ratio. All right, let's take a look for the SWR dip. We're down here at the bottom of the band, 6.9, up to 7. Whoa. Here's the dip. More than 3 to 1, not acceptable. This is an impedance matching device, and this is adding shunt capacity across the antenna. I'm going to go to one of the settings here, and now let's take a look and see what the SWR dip is. Still not a good dip. Go to another setting. Still not a good dip. Let's try this setting right here. Whoa, that's what I'm looking for. See that nice sharp dip right there. Here we are directly coupled to the HF whip antenna for 40 meters, just a very short coupling coax. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what the SWR would be with a K400 mount on a vertical surface. This is fiberglass above the mount, so it should drop in, we hope. And whoa, take a look at that. 3 to 1, you see the dip, so we see where the antenna is resonant. But wow, look at our impedance down to about 10 ohms. So looks like we're going to need that impedance matcher one more time. Let's see if we can get it to work to take out the reactance on this particular antenna. We're now working with the MFJ inductance, shunt inductance box, and as you can see, that dip is still not satisfactory. Let's add more inductance. It gets a little better. Let's add one more amount of inductance. Better yet, add more. And now let's go to full inductance, and yes, not a bad match at all. Down about 1.4 to 1, and pretty darn acceptable for an HF antenna. Again, we're resonant this time on 7296 at the top of the band. This will be fine. This is your typical light bar, and it's a favorite among hams to mount antennas on the light bar, so when you sell the vehicle, which I'll never do to the 76 wagon, you'll be able to take your antennas with you. The problem is, with the HF antenna mounted right here, there is so much capacity between the feed point and the metal of the vehicle. Even though the light bar is well grounded, you won't be able to overcome it with any type of antenna bridge. So this is not a good spot for HF. It's fine for VHF, but for high frequency, forget about trying to mount it on a light bar where there's 1 or 2 inches between the bar and the metal body of the vehicle. Here's the Diamond K400 trunk lid mount that needs absolutely no further adjustment for the feed point impedance. Notice that it's well grounded to the trunk lid. The trunk lid, when the lid is closed, is well grounded. I've moved up this little point here so I don't put a scratch in the vehicle like Julian did. And again, this mount articulates in many different directions, and it's a perfect 50 ohm match because notice how all of the metal slopes away below the whip. All right, be cautious of this mount in that this brass is simply pressed into the bottom of the SO239. We put the mount together like this. Don't forget the plastic insert. This keeps the hot part from shorting out. And again, be careful that this mount can only accommodate fairly lightweight ham whips, and as we screw this down, make sure that the plastic perfectly separates the hot from the outside metal of the mount. Again, a great mount for mounting on a all-terrain vehicle, nice and heavy, but the downside is a big antenna can actually yank right out from this mount. Once you have found the 50 ohms impedance match, either by a transceiver's built-in automatic antenna tuner or with the impedance matching devices, it's now time to actually tune that low SWR to a specific operating frequency. If you pull the whip out, by loosening up these set screws, you'll go lower in frequency and about 1 inch for every 100 kilohertz, no matter what band you're on. If you push the whip in, you're going to go higher in resonance, higher in frequency, but you're going to find that the whip bottoms out. And it's bottoming out on where the windings go through the fiberglass shaft. So very important that you never force the whip down below where it penetrates the fiberglass shaft, or you're going to break the inside winding wires. So be very, very cautious that you don't start off with a whip too long and jam it down, because you'll break the entire wire assembly that's part of the winding in the high-frequency whip. So get started on HF with a lightweight ham whip that you can mount on a Diamond K400 mount or any type of hatch mount or angle bracket. But once you've been on HF for maybe 6 months to a year, you may want to consider an antenna with higher Q, which means a larger coil, maybe motorized, maybe a capacity hat, but we'll talk about those a little bit later. And you know, on the air, on 10, 15, 20, and even 40 meters, you really can't tell a huge difference between the little $25 ham whip and this more expensive $300 to $500 big coil whip. But if you do 75 meters, you may want to be thinking about mobile with the big boys. But for right now, the little lightweight $25 ham sticks will do you just fine. So the key to good 50 ohm impedance is to mount this mount up high on your vehicle, either on a trunk lid or on a door where the mount is vertical, but you can articulate it so that the whip is straight up and down. And if you get it up nice and high on the vehicle, chances are you will not need to use your automatic antenna tuner inside the mobile rig, nor will you need to put this up near the vehicle to get the optimum feed point impedance. So have fun with high-frequency mobile, and we'll look forward to hearing you on the bands soon. 73.
Uh-oh.
All right. Oh, come on. That's unfair. Get rid of that. Come on. So Gordo wanted to add some extra notes here, and one of them was that you've always got to wear safety glasses. You only have one pair of these little peepers, so while you're around these really vicious stainless steel whips that are on the ends of your hamstick antennas, they will get you. So wear a good pair of safety glasses. I wouldn't recommend these cheap 3D glasses that you get from the movie theater. So get rid of those. You may want to go with a pair of shooting glasses or something similar. Or if you like, you can go with the Men in Black, glasses right here. So always wear the safety glasses. Don't use the inductive matching box with a Yaesu ATAS automatic antenna tuner, as the DC to control the motor is actually impressed in the coaxial line, and that will, of course, get rid of it. Another thing, get your HF mount up as high as possible, preferably on the roof if you can, but avoid roof racks. Although they look great, they don't do anything for your radio. Also, try and avoid low bumper mounts. The impedance will be too much of a mismatch. And make every attempt to get your lightweight HF whip, like I say, high as possible. Then you won't need that impedance box up there. And then we've got one other thing he says is, don't forget that 1 inch of whip lengthening brings the resonant frequency down by about 100 kilohertz. And that really doesn't matter what band you're on. It's the same kind of rule. Don't push the whip too long or too far down into this fiberglass section here. You see all the coils down here. You'll actually penetrate that, and that's not good for your antenna. And then he also says, have fun on high frequency. It's probably one of the best things that you'll end up doing, talking around the world. And I got to go do this. A little bit of touch-up paint for my car. Thanks very much, Gordo. So I appreciate that. And one final thing is, you saw Gordo throwing all his delicate electronic equipment into the front of his buggy. You may not want to do that unless you want to keep buying MFJ stuff. So have fun with that. And back to you, Bob. And I got some information later on about some special events that are coming up we might want to talk about a little later on. Bob, back to you.
Julian, there was so much information there, and I hope a lot of you are taking this in. That's one of the nice things about the replays here is that you can go back and look at that. There was a ton of information, good stuff, and you want to really get in and digest that, because if you haven't done any HF mobile, it's a whole new world. VHF is fun and, of course, extremely important when we're doing the emergency stuff. But, man, driving down the highway and talking to Australia in your car with 100 watts is just, there's nothing to describe that feeling. It's wonderful, and you want to do that. So it doesn't take a lot of, oh, yeah, some of those antennas, oh, my goodness. But you don't have to get that crazy. If you can do it, why... anything minor will get you started. But once you get the fever, look out. And it's tough today with these new cars, I have to tell you. Very tough. But here's a guy that's got a great mobile, and it works really good. And he's got all kinds of frequencies. And he's down there in that New Orleans area. And Don, we're going to hear some news from you. Let's see what's been going on around the world in amateur radio this week. You and Tyler, let us know what's happening. Don Wilbanks, it's all yours with Newsline.
Thank you, Bob. We can do that. Yeah, I run the ICOM 7000 in my Jeep Wrangler, and those K400 mounts are great. You can put a small screwdriver antenna with no problems on there. The little Tar Heel works really good on those K400s. They are strong. I'm going to have to shoot a Jeep ICOM 7000 video for you guys. All right, let's go to Amateur Radio Newsline, report number 1822. And here are your Ham Nation headlines for Tuesday, July 18, 2012. Wind-fan wildfires are still proving stubborn, but firefighters are beginning to gain some ground in their fight against the numerous blazes dotting the U.S. West. In Colorado, one of the hardest-hit states, the ARRL reported that since June 9, when the first of the wildfires began, hams, including Ham Nation's own Amanda Alden, K1DDN, have been assisting with disaster communications. Shortly after the High Park fire broke out, radio amateurs in Estes Park and Fort Collins were called upon to help provide communication support for the American Red Cross. Ham set up a crossband repeater to provide communications from Red Cross headquarters in Estes Park to their facilities at the fire base, as well as to an evacuation center at a local high school. Elsewhere across the West, firefighters are making slow progress in Utah, Wyoming, and Montana. A wildfire that burned more than 390 square miles in southeastern Montana was reported to now be 90% contained, and a separate fire in the same region of the state near Fort Howes was 65% contained after blackening nearly 97 square miles. The FCC is looking into the damage that a massive windstorm caused to wireless and landline phone networks in the mid-Atlantic USA. The storm took place Friday, June 29th. It swept from the Midwest into the Northeast, with the Mid-Atlantic states, including Virginia and West Virginia, taking the worst pounding. David Turetsky is the chief of the FCC's Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. In an email statement, he said that his agency plans to meet with a number of carriers in the coming weeks to explore the cause of the service issues to 911 service centers and the overall lessons learned. Turetsky continued by saying that these and other issues will be taken under advisement to ensure that the public receives the best communication service possible and is able to communicate effectively and in a way that safeguards public safety in these situations. FCC spokesperson Lauren Kravitz said the commission is still investigating the problems with emergency calls, but that 911 operators might have been unable to identify a caller's number and location. She said it's unclear how many people were able to make an emergency call at all. And some good news for hams in Illinois. That state now has its own PRB1-like law to protect the antenna rights of radio amateurs. Illinois Governor Pat Quinn has signed Illinois House Bill 1390 into law. This despite unfounded fears on the part of some of the state's radio amateurs, as widely posted to the internet. Fears that homeowner associations and real estate groups would try to derail the measure. Well, that turned out to be totally groundless. With Governor Quinn's signature affixed, Illinois Municipal Code was amended by adding Section 11-13-1.5. Paraphrased, it basically reads as follows. With regard to amateur radio communications and antenna regulations, and notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, no ordinance or resolution may be adopted or enforced by a municipality that affects the placement, screening, or height of antennas or antenna support structures that are used for amateur radio communications. Also, a municipality may not regulate the antennas or antenna support structures that are used for amateur radio communications in a manner inconsistent with this section. It should be noted that Illinois House Bill 1390 does not supersede such things as deed restrictions, covenants, conditions, restrictions, and homeowners association rules that might forbid the installation of outdoor antennas. Those are considered to be personal and binding business contracts and therefore not subject to override by the new PRB1-like law. And that'll do it for this week from Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news, brought to you each and every week for 35 years and counting at www.arnewsline.org. Don Wilbanks, AE5DW, and Tyler, 73. We'll see you next time here on Ham Nation.
Hey, thanks so much, Don. Very, very useful information for all of us, and it's how we can keep up on it. And check around your local repeaters, because no doubt there's many of them that will send the entire news line, which sometimes run 15, 20 minutes. Bill Pasternak and Don and Cheryl and all the group does a great job. So check out the local repeaters to get all of that. Well, we were talking about painting, touching up Julian's car. I wanted to bring to you some good news about restoration on my front. Goodness, we have so many old pieces of gear that I've had since day one, and some of them sadly got neglected through the years because I didn't use them, and moving them around in the different shelves of the plant and so on, and they get a little messed up physically. So one of my best fun things that I ever had was a Gonset Communicator. It showed up in the late 50s and just so much fun. VHF, one on 6 meters. They had one for 2 meters. They also had one for 10 meters. But I had a 6-meter one that I truly loved, and there was a local guy in the St. Louis area, Paul Schlipp. Paul and I worked back in the 50s and 60s on 6 meters, of course, and he is the Gonset king. I think he's probably got 3 or 4 dozen of them, and he restores them. And here's some pictures that you can relate to. First of all, the first one was taken in 1961 of my station. That was a kilowatt on 6 and 2 meters. You'll see the SB62. There's an article in the CQ magazine. I wrote the single sideband VHF column. That's how rare single sideband was in those days on VHF. I was one of the first 10 stations on single sideband back in 1958, actually. And that was a Johnson 6 and 2 Thunderbolt that I put together from a kit. But sitting over to the right is a little white box. The next slide was taken in 1962. And you'll see that wonderful little box is sitting on top of my HT37, which I still have and is still on the air. You'll see the 20A in the rack over there, still have that. Well, here we are with that Gonset, and it just works so well. Well, here's what happened to it after about maybe 35 or 40 years. The next slide will show you that it got beat up a little bit. And that's the front of it. One of the knobs got lost, and I replaced it. And I thought, man, I'm going to have to get this back in order. And I think I had a picture of the back, too. It was very unique. The Gonset people built a really cool thing. You'll see the power supply to your left. And for all of you listening on the podcast, you really ought to go look at the replays and look at some of these videos if you're interested. The power supply is on the left. That also had a vibrator in there. That was a 6 or a 12-volt vibrator, so we could run it mobile. And that's how we achieved the high voltage. To the right on the bottom, you will see the receiver. And then on the tray on top was the transmitter with a 2E26 in it. And each one of these modules pulled out. Now, how far away from technology was Gonset when they built these modular trays like that? It was really cool. Well, Paul, K0RWU, about, I don't know, it was 4 or 5 months ago, we were talking on 6 meters. He said, you should get me that Gonset and I'll restore it. And so here is what ended up with that wonderful old Gonset. There's Paul with that beautifully restored and perfectly working now Gonset Communicator. The very one that we saw back in 1961. And it's just sparkling. It's beautiful. And got the crystal in it. They used crystals for the transmitter. Of course, the receiver was variable. That's a crystal on 50.4. That's where most of the AM activity is. So when 6 meters opens, you want to go up to 50.4. But something very interesting. Paul has a repeater. You go in on 50.4, but you listen on 50.5. And boy, that's really cool. And it's AM, it's not FM. And my hat's off to him. The next slide shows a pair of us there. Just, I was so thrilled to see it again, because the last time I saw it, where those pictures were, it didn't look too pretty. But the Gonset Communicator is on the air. I'm sorry I don't have it with me. And the reason I didn't want to scratch it up and any of that and moving it down here, because I had a carload. All of this stuff behind me came down this time to Springfield from our plant in Illinois, and my home, my first home, of course, in Belleville. But here in the second home, we're bringing a few things, and the Gonset will come down, but I want to make sure it's sitting in the passenger seat, tied down and wrapped up in a blanket. I don't want to put a scratch on it, because I don't know, Julian, if I get Paul would be mad at me. But anyway, that's how things happen when you restore some of these things. It's so refreshing and such a great feeling to take something that's 45, 50 years old and bring it back to life. All of this stuff behind me is at least 30 years old, and most of it's 50 and beyond. I get such a thrill out of that. But yet, on the other table, of course, we've got all the new stuff. You got to stay in touch with it. But there's just something about me. And, you know, it's something for you guys and gals that are just getting into ham radio. Check around maybe some of the ham fests, and maybe some of the old timers can guide you through. Get you some of this old gear and get on the air and enjoy some of the older things. I'm telling you, it's so much fun to restore something and talk to somebody around the world, or across the street, or down the block, or across the country. Again, with some of these things that's been around for a long time. It's a big thrill. It really is. And you'll catch the fever. It's never left me. That excitement is still there. Every morning when I'm here in Springfield, you can catch me on 3885 with a group of guys on AM. And they're gracious enough to let me join them. And we're all using mostly all old gear. And I'm so thrilled to be able to use that gear. Here's 4 or 5 states get on every morning on about 9 o'clock Central Time. So dial it in, and if you can hear us, why, join in. AM is really fun. Nope. Only thing, it's the best thing. Nothing is best in amateur radio. It's just another adventure. So you want to join us with all of that. George, you have a lot of that good old stuff. I know you do. And you got a 7-foot rack now. You're going to fill that up with old stuff too, aren't you? What's happening down there tonight? What are we going to see?
Well, we're going to see something a little different tonight, Bob. The UPS man brought me this nice shiny roll of copper strap today so I can install it in that rack and get my ground system back in here. I'm temporarily connected right now, just using some number 10 Romex wire for my ground. My old copper strap wouldn't quite reach, so I picked up this roll here. Boy, this stuff is not cheap anymore. 25 foot there was about $65, but you know, if you want the best, go with the copper strap. Tonight, we're going to look at something a little different on Smoke and Solder, Bob. You know, most everyone's got a computer in their ham shack tonight. Probably anyone listening to us, because they're using a computer to listen to or watch the show. And I thought I would cover a neat new little computer that's out there right now that's really hot. I got lucky and got mine in a couple of weeks ago, but I was still putting the shack together here, which I'm still doing. And I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but I unboxed it and I took a look at what was in there. So, Alex, if you've got the video there, let's take a look. This week on Smoke and Solder, we're going to take a look at this new little simple computer that the internet's going crazy over. This is a Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi is a credit card-sized computer that plugs into your TV and a keyboard, and it's very capable of doing many of the things that you could do with a desktop PC, like spreadsheets, word processing, and games. It also plays high-definition video, And the Raspberry Pi Foundation wants to see it being used by kids all over the world to learn programming. So where can you get one of these? Well, right now, the Raspberry Pi Foundation has partnered with Premier Farnell or Element 14 Electronics in the U.S. and RS Components. Both of these are selling them all over the world. The Model A will cost $25, and the Model B, which is the only one that's currently available, is $35 plus local tax and shipping. The Raspberry Pi comes in a package by itself. The leads, the power supply, and the SD card are not included. However, you can order them at the same time as you purchase, or you can pick them up later. Now, what's the difference between the Model A and the Model B? Well, basically, the Model A is a redesign of the Model B. It has 256 megabytes of RAM. It has one USB port and no Ethernet network connection. The Model B has 256 megabytes of RAM, same as the A. It has two USB ports, one Ethernet port, but now the memory size can't be changed on either one of these since the memory is fixed on the board. The computer contains an ARM processor with floating point, and it's running at 700 megahertz. However, it can be overclocked to 800 or 900 megahertz. It has a Video Core 4 GPU processor for video, and the GPU is capable of Blu-ray quality playback using H.264 at 40 megabits a second. So the graphic capabilities are roughly the same as an Xbox One in level of performance. The overall real-world performance is something more like a 300 megahertz Pentium 2, only with much swankier graphics. As I mentioned earlier, you can overclock it, and that will improve the performance some. Now, the device boots from an external SD card, which is used as a hard drive, and you can use up to 32 gigabyte cards in these. Now, there's no real-time clock on the device, so it's expected that you'll set the time manually when you boot it, or if it's connected to the internet, that you'll get a time sync from there. The reason they didn't include a real-time clock on it is because it would have increased the cost of the device, and they were trying to meet a very low price point. The Raspberry Pi does not come with a case. However, there are other optional cases available, or you can build your own. It's a little bit large to fit inside an Altoids 10, so I'm not sure what I'm going to mount mine in just yet. The video can be connected to an HDMI connector on a television or monitor, or to a composite input on a standard old television set. You could also connect it to a DVI port on a monitor with an adapter, but the adapters are not real cheap. There's only an audio out on the device. There is no audio input. However, you can use your own USB sound card with it to increase that capability and get an audio input. The power requirements for the device are 5 volts from a micro USB charger, and you need 700 milliamps. There is no official programming language at this time, although it does support Python. Other languages are going to be added. Any that can be compiled to an ARM v6 processor will work. It will not run Wine or any Windows or x86 software. Linux distros that are supported at this time are Fedora, Debian, and Arch Linux, and others should be coming shortly. It'll run any program that can be compiled for the ARM v6 architecture, so you might want to do a little looking around to find out which ones are available to you. For networking, there is no Wi-Fi support built in. There's only an Ethernet card or jack built on here. It's a 10/100 wired Ethernet. The Model A has no Ethernet, but this is a Model B, the one that's currently available. There are 2 USB jacks on the device. If you need more USB ports, you can add a simple USB hub to this and put as many as you would like. So you probably would want a mouse and a keyboard to start with, maybe a sound card, a printer, who knows. But most any USB device that you can find drivers for, these distros of Linux will work. As I mentioned earlier, when they first began taking orders for these, you could only order one at a time. They put a maximum limit on there. Now they've lifted that, so you can order as many as you like, and I expect these to be popping up everywhere in the near future. At $35, it's a complete computer, just add a power supply and a SD card, and you've got a nice little Linux computer there. Now, it's not the most powerful thing in the world, but it is capable of doing many of the things that you'd like. The first project I plan to do with this, and I've got to do some research to see if it will work, but that is Echolink. I'd like to try to run Echolink on here and replace the computer that I've been using here to run the Echolink node for a local repeater. That's it for this week's Smoke and Solder. Hopefully next week we'll have the bench cleared off and be able to get the soldering iron on. I'm sure that there's a lot of ham applications out there that'll run on the Raspberry Pi. I just haven't had a chance to do any searching yet. I've got two of the devices now. I lucked up. I've ordered one from RS Components and one from Farnell, and they both showed up, so I've got to get busy with those. And as I mentioned, when I get the bench cleared off back here, hopefully by next week, we'll be able to do a little soldering in here again. It's been a while, and I could be getting rusty, Bob.
You never get rusty with the soldering iron. Never. Was that your green screen in use this week?
It sure was. I had the big Pi logo on the back wall there. Green screen's over here. Doesn't really work right with Skype with the hardware I have, but yeah, it's going to be handy. So we'll have to see what we can do in the future with that. I don't want to overdo it though, so we'll take it easy with it. I've got some stuff to give away here, Bob. What do you say we give somebody this Constructing HF Wire Antennas book from Jerry Busting?
That's a great book. There again, it's what we're talking about. It's this experimenting. It's doing things that just make so much of a thrill about this hobby, throwing up a wire and talking to somebody around the world, and you can do that. And that is a great book. If you haven't seen it, you need to get it. But let's see who's going to win it. That's even cooler if you could win it. So let's see what happens, George.
Okay, Bob. Our winner this week is Danny McKinley. He has the nice call letters K5FRT. And Danny says, copper is the best conductor. Aluminum can cause connection issues over a time. And I guess I should say what the question was. I was talking about the new studio /shack /man cave here, and I was asked, what is the best wiring for me to use in here, aluminum or copper? And just about everyone, or I think probably everyone got that one right. Copper is definitely the way you want to go. Shy away from that aluminum. And next week, we're going to give away another prize here that comes from our good friend Frank at cheapham.com, and that's this soldering practice kit. It's got, of course, the instructions and a bag of resistors and other components here and a PC board and instructions to help you get started soldering. Now, if you're an experienced solderer, let someone else win this, but if you're new to soldering or have never done it before, this would be a great kit for you to start with. And they even include one of these, which I have not seen in years. This is one of those little color wheels where you can spin it around for the different colors and figure out what value of resistor you have. So if you'd like to win this, well, our question is going to be, what is a Goonie bird? And if you know the answer to that, well, email me at hamnationcontest@gmail.com, and you could be the winner next week. Bob?
That's amazing. I can't believe you brought out the color wheel. I was cleaning out a whole drawer of things that I've had since 1950. And you know how that is. You got a couple of them there, and I'm sure you found this in your move. I was getting ready to bring some of the stuff behind me and other connectors, and I had my original color wheel from back in those days. And you know what? Every once in a while, you got to refer to it. You forget things and you get old. That's a really color wheel, let me tell you. I know you got the computer, and I know you can go to Google, and I know you can put in what is red and what is green. I don't know. There's just something. What is it, George? What am I talking about? What is missing in my language? How come I can't come up with a word to describe? What is it when you can just pick this stuff up and do it? What is that exciting thing that happens to all of us inside? Do you have a word for that?
I don't have a word for that, Bob, but I would call it the slide rule effect. You know, it's moving things around and getting the answers.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And then we go from all of that to the newfangled things. I have a lot of guys ask me about how are we getting this signal out of Pleasant Hope, Missouri, population 614, north of Springfield, about 5 miles. There's no internet here. There's no cell phone here. When Sarah bought this wonderful place, and she said, this is going to be a great place for your ham radio. And boy, was she right. Bless her for finding it. But anyway, here we are. What am I going to do? Well, just a couple of weeks after we took possession, I found out about Viasat. And I'm going, oh, my. And my good friend, Harry Thibodeau, we've been satellite buddies since back in the TVRO. There's a good one for you. What does TVRO mean? I'll tell you how old people are. But anyway, Harry is now working with Viasat. What an incredible thing. And they just had turned it on. And that's how you're seeing my signal is via satellite. The satellite never worked. It was always real slow, and it had lots of delay. Well, there's no delay here, man. Look at it. It's faster than lightning. And I think I'm getting, right now, I think I'm getting a 3.5 megs up and about 20 megs down. And you know, it's just an amazing technology. And here I am. I'm telling you about a Gonset Communicator on one hand and this incredible new thing from Viasat on the other. And how'd I get myself working? That went back to the old Wilson. Wilson is a long-time old manufacturer of ham radio antennas, and they make a cell phone repeater. I put up this little log periodic on the roof. It's about that long, and pointed it over to Fellows Lake, where the two towers for Verizon and AT&T are. Sarah's phone's AT&T. I'm in Verizon. Bring it down into right behind this desk is a 65 dB amp. Looks like a little 2-meter amplifier you have in the back of your car. And then throughout the house in a couple of places, it looked like an in-wall speaker is the antenna, and it repeats that small signal that was here. It's just, this is great technology, but it all became possible because of ham radio operators experimenting, doing what I'm telling you. Go out, get a piece of wire, throw it up, make something happen, because these are the things that are exciting. But man, how many things that you buy today would not be there if it wasn't for some crazy ham 50 years ago experimenting. So I encourage you to do that. Let's see what's going on with Cheryl. We need to find out what's going on in the chat room. So Cheryl, how are you doing up in Northern Illinois tonight? You taking all this in, and are you taking notes? I guess that's my big question. How you doing?
Hi, Bob. Hi, everyone. Greetings. Nice to see everyone in the entire chat room. And I do always take notes, and I do that with a computer rather than by hand. I used to do it by hand, and I was getting behind, but now I found a better method. But thanks for asking, Bob. We are having some severe thunderstorms and lightning right now, so if I blink out, I'm very, very sorry. I hope that will not be the case tonight. I did want to make a comment from one of our viewers, and I also agree. K9MIT says he loves it when Gordo says articulate. It makes us proud to be ham radio operators, so always articulate on the air so people can understand what you're saying, of course. Now, there was a chat room viewer that wanted to know, he thought that Ham Nation was the best looking on TWiT. The Skype video feed was so great, so they wanted to know what cameras we're using, and I know that I can answer that. That's a Logitech C910, and is it possible to get them to show and explain their lighting? Bob, I think you could shed the light on that answer because you helped me with that. So can you talk a little bit about the lighting that is used, that we use here on Ham Nation?
Yes. Well, I can tell you what I use, and I learned this from Leo, Alex, John, all of them said, get one of these babies. And I have one. This one, I forget how many's in here, but there's a whole bunch of LEDs in here. And this is battery operated, but the one that I'm using in front of me has, oh gosh, about, I think there's 500 of these. It's bigger, and it's powered by AC. I also took the batteries out of one of these and plugged it up to my 12-volt power supply, so I don't have to power some batteries. And I better not turn that on because crazy things. But that's what we're using. Amazon, you can buy these all over the place. It's an LED panel. They work great.
And another one for you, Bob. I just wanted to comment that I had a friend say, oh, I put a paper towel over my LED light to soften the light. So that's what I actually use to. It doesn't really, it's not the same thing as airbrushing, but it helps. So paper towel is just draped over mine. And there's a tripod right behind the monitor here. And that's what I use. And one incandescent light and two clear blue lights on the left and right towards the back. But I don't have a side light yet. I'm working on that. Now, we had a viewer asked you, Bob, now that you have all those coaxes coming into your shack, do you have any critters coming in with those, or were you successful in keeping out the rodents?
Yeah, of course. We've talked about this many times. Yes, absolutely. And,
well, they just wanted to verify to make sure it was holding. And they want to know how you deal with the noise on the air. Is there any special filters or anything you can mention about HF operations of how you deal with noise on the air?
No. One thing, and we got to get into this, we're going to start doing a whole bunch of subjects. Gordo came up with quite a list of what we're going to start covering some of these, how to tune in the sideband signal, how to adjust your RF gain. That's very important because that is how you can help reduce the noise floor. A lot of people don't realize what can be done with an RF gain and noise blankers today. So we're going to get into some of that, but that's how you do it. There's a magical little mix of that RF gain. No preamps. Don't use any preamps. You don't need that on HF. And those are some of the key secrets. No, just things you got to do to make it work.
I also wanted to say hello to George, and wonderful that Raspberry was just so cheerful on his green screen tonight. I just absolutely love that. And of course, all of his video work is always tremendous too. But thanks, George, for being there. We really love that. One thing that came up that I think Julian might have an answer for this, apparently KF7 TKS had a question. Do the new cell phone laws affect ham users? And if you're on the air here, Julian, could you take that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, the new or the California laws that came in back in January do affect ham radio operators. There was a letter that was circulated from the head of the DMV in California, which said these rules are not supposed to affect or have any ruling over ham radio operators. However, the cop on the street doesn't know that and never got a copy of that rule. So yes, you can get pulled over by using a push-to-talk microphone. However, you can go to court and try and fight it in court, but there's no guaranteeing that you will win. In the actual law itself, in the Vehicle Code of California, there is no exemption for ham radio. Even though back in the days when they were talking about it, they were saying they were going to put that kind of exemption in there. It's not in there, so take your choice. See what you want to do. You can always do what they do in Japan, which is grab your microphone, put it down in your lap as you transmit, and just speak with a loud voice. Gordo's very good at that.
I also think that some of those things vary on a state-by-state basis, so always check your local regulations or state regulations, how they might affect you, no matter where you might be.
Absolutely.
And
Cheryl,
yes.
There's one other thing. I found out today that California has just made it legal, not illegal, but legal to do hands-free texting. So if your phone is one of those where you can just say hello to it, like if you have a Galaxy phone, you can say, "Hi, Galaxy," and it'll start listening to you, or an Apple with Siri, you can actually speak to it and tell it to send a text message, and that is absolutely fine.
As long as it's voice recognition and you're not using your fingers and looking down, I guess that's acceptable. Anyway, Bob, we have a viewer that wants to know, and I'd like you to answer this. It's not that hard, but where do they go to get the replays for Ham Nation? They're really kind of curious about where they go to exactly get your replays of the Ham Nation show.
Well, it's real easy. As I tell so many people, all you have to do is put 2 words into Google, Ham Nation. And when you do that, it will bring you up to our page on the TWiT network. You don't have to put in all the complicated HTTP ... All you have to do is put in Ham Nation, Google. It will then bring you to that page that you see on your screen right there. Thanks, Alex. And then you can pick out all of the replays, and it works really well. On the top, right now, if you did that, there's a little red thing that says Watch Live at the top. And if you click that, it will take you to the programming of the TWiT network at that time. And that's what you should do. And Leo and all of the wonderful people, Tom Merritt, Sarah, all these wonderful people that are doing great shows on the network at other times. So that'll help you. And it really works great. So you want to check that out. One thing before we get out of here, you were talking about the light. You got it. I cover these up with nylon because watch what happens. Let me pull it over here. Watch what happens when I take that nylon away. It gets very, very dry. Washes me out. And you can see how that washes me out. If I put the nylon over the light, no matter what kind of light it is, it will then soften the glow. Isn't that cool? And it's just a piece of nylon. It works great. You're going to ask me, why did you get that? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's one of our dealer. And I just take that end of it.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice, Bob. Thanks for the tips. That's from K9EID, Bob Heil. He's got all the really neat tips of the trade there. I kind of mix incandescent a little bit, so sometimes it gets a little hot on the hair, as you can see, and you have to try and set that and everything else. But yeah, any kind of questions you guys have, always feel free to pose them in the chat room. That's what I'm there for, is to help you out. Thanks for watching, and I really enjoy being here, Bob. You have a great evening.
Yeah, thanks for your help, and we'll be listening for you on New Line. So we're going to have to get out of here because they have another show coming up. We're very, very happy to bring you Ham Nation. You want to listen to the replays because then you get to hear Joe Walsh, WB6ACU, who wrote and plays the theme every week. If you haven't heard that, you need to go find a replay, Ham Nation, into Google, and listen to Joe as he plays the Ham Nation theme. Joe's out on tour with his new album called Analog Man, so be watching for that. Everything closed down and ready to shut the door in Costa Mesa. Julian, you all ready to go spend some time with your lovely new wife?
Yes, actually, but she may have already beaten me. She's gone down to the Orange County Fair again, where, interestingly enough, there is no amateur radio booth. I think Gordo is to blame, and he's still in the trunk of my car after scratching my car, so I got to go clean that back up. Maybe let him out.
Thanks for all you do, and we appreciate your help with the videos. You guys send all your videos in and get them to Julian because we got lots of time to fill here and the future shows, and we want to bring you lots of good things. But Julian will help you through the video. George, hope you get your green screen all working the way you want and get your shack back to shape. And I know you will fill up the 7-foot rack soon. So thanks, George.
Thanks, Bob. Good to be here again tonight. By the way, for lighting, I'm using daylight balanced fluorescent screw-in bulbs and soft boxes. And that's what I use here. Looking forward to it next week. Maybe we'll have the bench clear here and we can make a little smoke, Bob. So 7-3.
Okay. All right. Hey, we'll see y'all later. We're going to head down the road and go get on 7268 and 14268. 7268, lower sideband, and 14268, upper sideband. We'll see you guys and gals there. Cheryl will be on 3850. So fire up those radios, get out that wire, and stay in touch and enjoy this hobby. It's just too good for just a few of us to enjoy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Spread the word. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Leo Laporte, for the bandwidth, the time, and thanks to Alex Carton and all the guys and gals back in Petaluma that produced this show for you. Bye-bye for now. 7-3 from K9EID.